Thanks everyone for having me here today. Sorry I'm a little bit late. It's getting pretty ugly out there in San Francisco. Leaving, it was dumping rain. I think they're going to get 3.5 inches today, is what they said. So, pretty astonishing. So as you said, I'm the API Evangelist. Give you a quick little background on myself. So I'm a 25-year database guy. I've been doing databases since I think '87 was my first job doing COBOL databases, and I've been at it ever since. And for the last 15 years, that's, database-driven websites, web applications, online, basically living on the internet. And the last 8 years, this phenomenon, another word similar to API that we call cloud, means everything and nothing at the same time. But I've been doing that for the last 8 years exclusively. And then the last 4 years, since 2010, all I've been doing is studying APIs. And even though I'm an engineer, I study the technology of APIs. My specialty and my focus is really around what I consider the business and politics of APIs, because there's a lot more going on than just the technology, and that's what I'm hoping to share with y'all here today. So I have a blog called API Evangelist where you can find all of this, and I take what I do pretty seriously. I've been doing it 4 years. And I help people understand APIs. And I really take pride in going outside of developer circles and IT circles and helping the normals, as I call them, understand APIs. And I work with everything from startups to small businesses, enterprises, large institutions. I'm working with over 10 universities now. And I also work with the White House on API strategy. So, how many people know what an API is? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. All right, interesting. How many of you used an API? Well, interesting, okay. That's a lot more hands than I actually get in a lot of conversations. So you guys are pretty savvy, I would say. So, if you use a mobile phone, you're using APIs. This is why we're talking today. This is why APIs are so important, because it's all about delivering the resources you need to the mobile phones that are ubiquitous in our lives nowadays. So this is what made APIs. But APIs have been around for a long time in a lot of different forms, but it wasn't until the mobile phone that it became so prominent. So what I would like to do today is I'm going to walk you through some well-known APIs, and then I'm going to walk you through some lesser-known APIs, and hopefully surprise you with the number of APIs out there. And that's why I called this, the world unfolding around you, because they really are everywhere. They, just like the mobile phones, APIs are becoming ubiquitous in our world. And hopefully you'll be even more of a believer when I get done with this. So, the king of APIs really is Amazon these days. Amazon, everything from commerce all the way to changing how we do computing. Amazon has used APIs in ways I don't think they imagined early on. They started using them just to extend their commerce network and build out a larger affiliate network. And then they started using APIs internally at Amazon to work between groups and departments in a way that was a little different than I think anyone else out there was doing it. And this resulted in what we now know as Amazon Web Services, which if you're at all building web apps, mobile apps, Internet of Things apps, anything today, you probably touch Amazon Web Services. When Amazon goes down, I think like 40% of the internet goes down with it. So hopefully that doesn't happen very often. Next, eBay. They're kind of one of the silent giants of APIs. They've been doing APIs since 2001, 2002. We really don't hear much about them because they're doing it right. They really don't make their developers mad. And I think they have a lot of solid developers that are using it to build auctions and actually extend their businesses and auction off products, goods, and services. Flickr is one of my favorites. Katarina Fake, who started Flickr, did something interesting with their APIs. When they built this photo sharing site that was pretty interesting, and then they built an API so that they could build embeddable widgets, so you could put your Flickr images on your website and do other things like that. But what they did differently is they became so popular that they had a whole bunch of people wanting their attention. And what Katerina Fake did was said, hey, I don't have enough time to talk to all you people. So if you could, build something on our API, get some traction, get users using it, and then we'll know it, and we'll call you. So she coined the term BizDev 2.0. So this is a different type of business development. So you have a self-service API, encouraging people to go build stuff with your assets. In this case, it's photos. And then once they build something and it actually is of importance to users, because how APIs are designed, you as a provider know that. Flickr would know if a user is using one of these applications. And then they just call you and reach out to you. So it's a really interesting way to handle and filter out demand. And that was really when I think for me, things started changing and it started being less technical and more about business. And then social came along. And we started seeing companies like Twitter who used APIs in a technical way. They launched Twitter, I think, in March of 2006, and then by September, they had an API. So Twitter, to begin with, was just that text box in the middle of a web page that you could just tweet. You could sign up for an account, and you could tweet, and you could follow people. That was it. That was Twitter. And then they launched their API, and everything else we know about Twitter today was built on that API. Their Android apps, their iPhone apps, their BlackBerry apps, all of their TweetDeck, the hashtag, everything, all of these things came from the community, came from the developer community. And they were, again, change how we think about communicating online. Facebook's another one. Facebook used their API to build their whole ecosystem. I think it was 2007 they launched their API. And basically, all the games we know, Farmville, all those popular games that you hear about on Twitter, Zynga, which is a $1 billion company now, they were built through the API. They built all of what we know, all the games, all the productivity apps, everything we know through the API. And another thing that Twitter and Facebook did that was a little different is they used their APIs along with what's considered embeddable buttons, widgets, and that's the share button that we know now. That little piece, ushered in a whole social age, making content, making assets and resources, digital assets and resources online shareable. And those little buttons are API driven. LinkedIn, another social network, business networking, all API driven. Lots going on behind the scenes there as far as building, jobs, building your career, building your portfolio, all API driven. Google I think has like 110 APIs now. I mean, we're talking Google Maps, Google Apps, Google Search. Everything you do on Google has an API to go along with it. So Google's definitely one of the leading pioneers when it comes to APIs and managing a large volume of APIs and some very popular APIs. Microsoft's jumped on the bandwagon a little bit late. They're a little bit slower than the rest. But they have Bing search APIs. They have Bing map APIs. They've gotten in the cloud game. They have Azure, all API driven, very similar to Amazon's cloud computing. Yahoo's been doing it a long time. They're definitely one of the pioneers. Search, maps, financial news, pretty much everything behind the scenes at Yahoo is API driven. They have an advertising network, a whole gaming network that's all API driven. Apple. So really, this is when things started solidifying for the business side of things, when we got the App Store. And once the iPhone came out, and now Apple, you can see they have the Watch Kit on their homepage right now. They have a health kit when it comes to quantified self. So you can build health applications that use your iPhone, and keep track of how much you walk, how much you move. They have all the little extensions so you can take your heart rate. I know they have diabetes tools. They have a lot of stuff. All of that is accessible via APIs for developers to build around. Instagram. This is an interesting story. I knew the founders. They're 3 guys, and when they started, they got so popular, all they had time for was to maintain the servers to keep their mobile app going. And someone came along, and this is what I mean when if you're using mobile apps, you're using APIs. They reverse engineered the Instagram application. mapped out Instagram's APIs because it wasn't a public API. It was just purely for Instagram's use. And then someone launched what's called a rogue Instagram API, meaning it wasn't run by the company. It was something just some kid had done over the weekend, and it became really, really popular, and it led to a lot of growth for Instagram, to the point where Instagram's like, okay, all right, we're going to launch an API. Can you take that one down? We'll do our own. And they launched, I think, like a week or two later, they launched their own. Just kind of put a wrapper on, a public face on their existing API. So Instagram's pretty well known for that, and it led to Facebook acquiring them for that insane sum. Foursquare. So once we got our phones in our pockets, we started getting a little more aware of location, concept of checking in, concept of finding places around us, local, social. That was all API driven. Foursquare's had APIs since, I think, within months after launching. Yelp, similar. Finding businesses, recommendations, reviews. Every part of Yelp is API driven. WordPress. WordPress has had several APIs as plugins and extensions, but as of 4.1, which is out right now, I think coming in January, APIs are going to be default for all WordPress installs. So that means all your pages, all your blogs, all the content in any WordPress site will have an API. Now what that means is instantly in January, 65 million websites will have APIs. I think it's like 20% of the top 10 websites run WordPress. So instantly, a large chunk of the internet is going to instantly have APIs, changing how we distribute content. Tumblr, another blog, very popular content, sharing, social blogging. They have APIs, all API driven. Dropbox, changing how we share files. Uber's got an API. You can build and integrate anything you want into Uber now, and call for rides, call to be picked up, access users' information. PayPal, changing how we accept payments, extending the reach of payment systems globally. I can send money to, I think, like over 150 countries now where I used to not be able to. I pay people doing work for me in Egypt, Morocco, places where I can't send them a check. I can't do a bank-to-bank, but I can send them PayPal payments. All API driven. FedEx, UPS, USPS, they've had APIs for over 10 years, all three of them. The Guardian, New York Times, they both have APIs, changing how we share, how we create news, how we generate news. The Guardian and New York Times both provide access to a lot of the data and research and resources behind the news. So you can get deep dive information and data on politics, elections, government spending, all kinds of interesting things through the APIs. YouTube. YouTube's a pretty interesting one because they really took the whole, the buttons and badges that I talked about with Facebook, but they extended their network of that player, that YouTube player. That's API driven. That little video player can exist on any website, anywhere, because of APIs. Think of that, what that did to YouTube. That made it so YouTube went from just youtube.com, where you could go and upload videos and watch videos, to an entire network, a video network, running on anyone's sites, running on our mobile phones, and makes it so you can create content and distribute content anywhere. So that's just the popular ones. Those are the ones that are pretty widely known. I'd like to talk about some APIs that you may not know about, but you're going to recognize the brands, because trying to drive home the fact that this is happening. This isn't just the top tech companies that I just walked through, these leading tech companies. Everyone's doing it now. I'm working with Johnson Controls, a 140-year-old company who does probably a lot of the heating and air conditioning and building management on campus here. They're doing APIs, and they're opening up APIs to their infrastructure. So there's a lot of companies doing it that you may not be aware of. When it comes to music, music industry is finally finding its footing and a healthier business model and evolving and recovering from the whole MP3 thing with APIs. So we think of, Echo Nest, you may not know the name, but they're Spotify. RDO. So when it comes to, the next generation of radio, it's all API driven. Ford's had APIs for quite a while. I had them to my event in Chicago in September and talked about their platform. And they have, their core auto APIs, and then they have an open source framework that they work with other manufacturers and other, their whole supply chain to make it so you can access their vehicles. And anything after pretty much 1997 is going to be accessible via APIs, any vehicle. And then there's ways of doing the older cars, but that's a different story. So in your cars, it's not just about accessing the car and its, all of its components, its tires, its fuel efficiency, all of that. It's also about piping in content and information via APIs. So all those sites I just walked through, Foursquare, Yelp, RDO, all of this, think of that all in your dashboard, all via APIs, coming in through the car, all available via APIs from other companies. Visa, MasterCard, I work with both these companies. They're trying to figure out APIs and figure out the next generation of the banking industry. Expedia, so travel is changing in some pretty dramatic ways. How we book flights, how we compare flights, Orbit, Expedia, all of these companies are using APIs to get access to the hotel inventory, the flight inventory. I got a text last night at about midnight telling me my flight was going to be delayed this morning. And that's all API driven because I'm using TripIt. TripIt does that, and it actually works with Delta and works with all the airlines to get the data they need to give me that SMS push notification. So your travel experience is all API driven these days, good or bad. Sometimes it can be bad. Don't think APIs always equal good. That's a myth. AT&T, big proponent of APIs. So we're talking, telephony, speech APIs, but they're also doing lots of Internet of Things, device-based stuff, billing, advertising, content APIs. So when it comes to managing your bill and your data plans, they're opening up all kinds of APIs so that you can understand how you actually consume data. Best Buy, they've had APIs for quite a while. You get out all their products, all their reward systems, store location, pretty much anything that is on bestbuy.com is available via APIs. So that developers can build their own apps, build it into alongside other products and services that they have, other reward systems. They can integrate it with Walgreens reward systems. Now APIs are, I just worked with a company last week. You can now pay your Affordable Care Act payments via cash at Walgreens and CVS because of APIs. There's an API out there called the Cash Tie API, which makes so you can go into retail stores like Walgreens, CVS, and Target, pay cash, and you get what you do is if you've ever used the Starbucks, bought Starbucks on your phone where you can scan the barcode, that's Cash Tie API that enables that barcode. So it basically takes something virtual online, makes it so you can show someone that virtual barcode, give them cash, they scan it with their point of sale system, and it makes that link. It's the Cash Tie API. It's a pretty interesting concept when you think about the unbanked in this country. There's like 23 million underbanked people in this country that can't make their Affordable Care Act payments, pay their gas, pay their utility bills, send money to family, because they don't have bank accounts. So when you think about the connection between our physical and our virtual worlds and these retail stores being able to reinvent themselves, Walgreens and CVS are totally reinventing themselves right now using APIs. CVS has taken that kind of mission-driven, that healthcare focus, which I think is super healthy, and they're reworking all of their internal systems to better connect with their consumers and change that retail corner location into kind of a gateway or a doorway to our digital worlds. Pretty interesting, all API driven. So So for me, that part of it, that brick and mortar, that digital and our physical worlds meeting is super fascinating. New York City has APIs. They actually have two developer portals, competing ones, because they don't get along in the city, so they launched two separate portals. San Francisco, London, Paris. 40 of the top 50 US cities have developer portals. We're talking everything from budget and fiscal transparency and accessibility to Open 311, making reports of potholes in the road. All of that is API driven. A lot of these cities are having hackathons or data jams, encouraging developers to build stuff and take part in civic activities. All API driven, all open data driven. World Bank, exposing the finances of countries, markets, their own financial system, all available via APIs and open data. Clout. Clout's an interesting one because it's a social ranking, social score. So my score, last time I checked, was like 67. And it takes your Twitter feed via APIs, take your LinkedIn via APIs, your Facebook, your Instagram, basically every social presence you have, and they give you a ranking based upon that. Why is that? If you're not into the whole social business, why is that relevant? Why do you care? Because in California, in Silicon Valley, some companies won't hire you unless your ranking is over 60. They're giving it to insurance companies. Your insurance rate is going to be based upon your clout score. This is your credit score of this new digital age. They have an API, and they use APIs to aggregate and create this score. So companies are going to be using this along with your FICO credit score, along with other rating systems, to rate individuals and businesses based upon what you do online. Because if you have a certain footprint or fingerprint online, they're going to deem you trustworthy because you can prove who you are. You have longevity online. All of it API driven. Nest. Our thermostats, our smoke alarms in our houses have APIs. Integrate with your phone. Other companies are running with this. Basically, every aspect of your home has an API now. You got Philips lighting, your security systems, your appliances, all kinds of stuff have APIs now in your homes. This is the whole Internet of Things. PBS, NPR, both have vast distribution networks that are API driven, allowing different stations to put content on via the API, videos, stories, audio, and it gets distributed around the public broadcasting network, all API driven. Then they build mobile apps. They allow developers and other people to build apps and interactive kiosks and stuff on top of this content. Reddit, the homepage of the internet, they have APIs, all API driven. No big secret there. U.S. Census Bureau, they started with just massive open data. You could get the 2000 and 2010 census via a big download, big old huge file. 2012, they launched APIs. And then now they're completely rethinking the next census because of APIs. They're going to, I think they're going to do a 10-city hackathon tour. They don't call them hackathons in the government. They call them data jams or civic jams. But you'll find one in your region in the next probably, I think, 6 to 9 months because they're going to be testing out how to crowdsource or how to locally source the next census by giving people iPhone and iPad apps that are API driven. And then as well, they're going to be doing something similar to Clout, where they're going to actually take digital census. What does it look like online? What's your Twitter profile? Who's on Twitter? Who's on Facebook? How do you identify on these social networks, when it comes to race, when it comes to class? They're going to be doing a lot of this and pulling data via APIs and working it in with their census data. Department of Labor, they're going real time with all of their labor statistics and all their agencies. So you're going to be able to get at basically any of our economic data in real time. historically had to wait for a lot of reports. So they're starting to publish this directly out of their databases and their partner data dumps and make it accessible through a single API interface that you can get at. Tracking on 90 separate agencies. There's 246 federal agencies. 90 of them have some sort of developer portal now. Only about 25 of them are what I would consider healthy, sensible ones. Leaders being census, labor, NASA's got some pretty amazing stuff. APIs coming out. Space sounds. You can get at sounds from space through an API. You can get at mission information, photos of space, photos of Earth, all kinds of stuff, all through their APIs. NOAA, weather, they're one of the leaders when it comes to APIs. Very relevant API-driven data when you think about the relevancy of this content. Weather affects us all, and weather APIs are one of the older APIs. Digital Public Library of America, working with libraries across the U.S. to digitize their collections. They have, I think, 10 regional centers now that that have field staff that will go out to local museums and local collections and local libraries, help them digitize those collections, and it's all now available through an API. As you browse photos, artwork, historical collections in DPLA, you can then, at any point as you're searching in the address bar, you can change it and it'll give you a JSON or XML response rather than the HTML page. And that's an important transition because when you think about it, you know, APIs seem very scary, like it's the next technology that no one understands. Really, it's just the next evolution of the internet. Rather than us just typing in an address, getting a HTML page back that us humans with our eyeballs look at, that same page is now available in JSON, which is a machine-readable format, and it now can be built into anything. And it's not just reading that JSON, you can write to that JSON. So it's making the internet not just something you consume. It's actually something it's participatory. You actually are part of the web. You're programming the internet. Fundamental shift in how things are going to be working. The White House has APIs. So they have a petition API. They have several other APIs, but the petition one's very interesting because you could pull a list of the thousands of petitions and the millions of people who've signed these petitions on various topics from immigration and healthcare to, I think one last year they wanted them to build a Death Star, like out of Star Wars. There was an actual petition for that. It did pretty well. It didn't quite get the signatures. But now they have a Write API. It's in beta, so you have to be part of a certain group to use it, but it'll be public here this year. And you can actually petition the White House on issues via an API through any website, any application on your mobile phone or app from anywhere in the world. So it's going to change how we petition the White House and how we interact with our government. Sorry. Shh. Don't say that too loud, you guys. They're listening. Open corporates. You can get at all corporate data through Open Corporates API. Not all, but mostly. So they aggregate SEC filings, basically everything out there into a single location. And it's interesting when you start looking at companies, because in this multinational kind of global corporate world, companies aren't what they seem anymore. And open corporates, you can link these together based upon investors, based upon where their money flows. And you look at companies like, we just did one on Pearson Publishing. You might be familiar with them here on campus. And I think it came down to they're like actually 269 separate companies, all linked together, all distributing content and educational content and tools and services around the globe. Pretty fascinating when you start mapping it out, all because of APIs. I'm doing stuff around the tech companies now, showing how popular Ireland is for a destination because of it being a tax haven. So it's pretty interesting when you start looking at the Googles and Facebooks and Microsofts and everyone Apple has a corporate headquarters in Cork or Dublin because of certain things. You start seeing how the money flows. And I'll end it with Wolfram Alpha. Anybody come across Wolfram Alpha? Mathematica? Pretty exciting stuff. If you ever met Stephen Wolfram, he's a pretty crazy guy, pretty interesting, super smart guy. All API driven. Everything, all their equations, all their intelligence, everything they're doing, all their algorithms, all available through their API. So you can basically build on top of all of their work, all API driven. So why are people using APIs? I've talked a little bit about it. We've been building websites. Amazon's been building distributed websites for a while. Mobile devices, I talked about that. We're building a lot of single-page apps. If you're not familiar with single-page apps, you're probably going to a lot of these websites these days where it's got the 4 menu items. You click on it and it just jumps down the page. So rather than going to separate pages, it's all on one single page. It's a single-page application. And everything you have, all the content, all the data, everything is available in that single-page application. And most of the time, not always, but these are API driven. And so these single-page apps are very portable. They can live anywhere. They're very easy to publish. A lot less overhead than with building traditional websites or database-driven websites. Very lightweight. Aggregation. We're seeing a lot of aggregation occurring now. So everything from financial data with Yodlee is one of those. So they aggregate financial data from many different markets and many different sources, give it to you in a single API. There's ones that are aggregating the social network. So you can get at LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all through a single API. There's ones that are doing media, photos. So you can say, give me my photos, a list of my photos, and it'll find them on Flickr, on Instagram, on Facebook, and give Picasa and give them to you in one listing. So you don't have to go to all the different networks to get at your content. So there's a lot of aggregators popping up out there to help us with our media, our files, all of this. Lots of time-saving stuff, because as our lives move onto the cloud, it's a good thing when all of our photos and videos live in the cloud and our hard drive fails. But now, when our files live in 10 different locations around the web, it can be a mess. I'm organizing my photos right now from the last, I think, 6 years from 8 locations. And I download them to one place, dedupe them, put them into albums, and it's like, taking me 100 hours of work to do that. It's hard. It's hard to clean up this mess. So these aggregators are looking to help us with that. Reciprocity. So if you're in technical circles, you'll call this interoperability, integration, automation, ETL if you're a really crazy enterprise person. I call it reciprocity because this is what governments do. They create reciprocity agreements between countries, how trade interacts between these countries. That's what we're doing with APIs. And as tech companies rise and become very country-like, Facebook's Twitter has a lot of pretty big population and a lot of power and a lot of control. They're very country-like. They're kind of the new age country. So APIs allow us to move our data between these platforms and keep them in sync in real time, just pull it out, delete our account. And there's services like If This Then That, Zapier, tracking on about 50 of these reciprocity providers that are using APIs and allow you to move all of your data and be in control of your data. I'm going around to different universities and teaching students to use Zapier and If This Then That to manage their project data, manage their photos, manage their blogs. So as reciprocity providers are empowering non-developers to use APIs. That's why it's pretty important that you understand that APIs exist. Voice, how do you think Siri knows all the stuff she knows? APIs. Real time. So getting that data, push notifications, streaming data, all of that. Streaming videos, streaming audio, all of this. Lots of real-time frameworks emerging that are API driven, sit on top of APIs and take something that's just sitting there and turning it into a real time. Spreadsheets. Seeing a lot of spreadsheets be converted into APIs because, I know database administrators would love to think that their databases house all the world's data, but spreadsheets do. In different departments. I've gone around to organizations and done needs assessments of large institutions, and you go to the management and you go, so how do you all manage data? And they go, oh, we got, the HAL 3000 Oracle database. Everyone puts their data into that. All right. I go around the middle management and the workers, and I go, how do you manage your data? We use HAL 3000. You're like, okay, well, show me what you do. Show me how you do what you do. Well, we have our data in this spreadsheet or this Access database, and we manage it there until Friday, until reports are due, and then we upload it to HAL 3000. But we actually get our jobs done in spreadsheets and FileMaker Pro databases and CSV files and all of that. So that's where the data lives, and there's a big push to get all of that available via APIs. But the cool thing about spreadsheets is it's a two-way street. You can actually drive spreadsheets with APIs. So Excel, Google Spreadsheets both have functions for making calls to APIs. So rather than having the data in your spreadsheet and emailing that around when you need to share it, you can email around a spreadsheet that has an API connection, has all the charts and bells and whistles and macros and all that crazy stuff you do, link data, link spreadsheets. But now the content's always up to date. As soon as it has an internet connection, it repopulates the cells from APIs or one or multiple APIs. And so you're able to work in the tools you're familiar with, but now you just did away with all that stuff that's out of date, all that emailing spreadsheets around. Pretty crazy new world. And when I worked last summer at the Department of Veterans Affairs, so I spent the entire summer going around taking data inventory for the White House as part of a open data initiative, and just going around group to group for 3 months asking where your data's at, and it was all in spreadsheets. They all do everything in spreadsheets, all the patient data, everything. And then there's our devices. I touched a little bit on it. Our cars, our devices, our Fitbits, our quantified self. We have sensors, we have billboards, our homes, our buildings. Everything is being wired up with APIs right now. Surveillance cameras. There's entire API surveillance camera networks for security. Lots of people who are building devices are using APIs, whether it be fleet management, commercial stuff, or all the way down to the personal quantified self. Pretty interesting, pretty scary stuff at the same time. So like I said, there's two sides to this coin. You can either be an API provider or you can be an API consumer. I recommend you be both. That's where the healthiest perspective comes. If you're aware that APIs exist at every company, APIs have kind of been the secret for developers, for the ruling class of IT and developers, is you would have to know an API is there to find it, and we know how to find it. But more increasingly, you can find it in the footer of a site. You'll see a developer's link or an API link at the bottom. Some companies are getting brave and putting it up top, making it prominent. And I'm seeing API said more in New York Times and Washington Post more in the last 2 years. Prior to that, it was always application programming interface, also known as API. It was never in the title, it was always in the body and always fully explained. But in the last 2 years, it's just API. You see API talked about. So it's slowly moving into the mainstream consciousness. And with tools like Zapier and if this then that, the spreadsheet connectors, you as a non-developer can start taking control of APIs. And then there's companies like API Spark and Kimono Labs, and there's a whole bunch that allow you, the non-developer, to deploy APIs, upload a spreadsheet. It'll turn it into an API, make it public or private, secure it for you. Kimono Labs allows you to scrape any website. You can point it at any website and train it, and it'll pull the content and make an API out of the content, all without not knowing how to program. So to be a provider and a consumer, you don't have to be a developer for either ends now. So really, all of this is about access to resources, access to our digital assets. Whether it be from our city governments, our county governments, our federal agencies, veterans' health records. Working with the IRS right now to get their API. They have a web service, an older legacy one. That's how you use TurboTax. That's how you do your taxes every year. We're working on getting a new one I'm working with Department of Education on the FAFSA API, the Financial Student Aid System. They want to turn that into a TurboTax-like place. So every year when you apply for school, you don't have to fill out the form, get mom to fill it out, get dad to fill it out. You go into your TurboTax-like environment, fill it out as you can. A little wizard walks you through it, all the help, all the content, and it could be through a wide range of providers. It wouldn't just be one organization or your institution. It could be any number of companies or organizations. You can share it and invite your dad, invite your mom to come in and fill out their portion of it. It'll link up to the IRS API and actually pull their transcripts, their IRS records into it. This is all in the works right now, being funded. Healthcare, you have a blue button. Your healthcare data is coming out of government. You have green button, your energy data. I work with the major utility providers to come up with API data standards and what our consumers are supposed to get access to. So it's all about access to resources. And the secret for the last 5 years is the Googles and Facebooks and Twitters have access to the resources, and that's why they're making so much money. This next wave is about everyone here having access to their own resources via APIs. It gives back a little bit of control. For businesses, for individuals, gives you a little bit more agileness, makes you more agile, more nimble, because it you can get at your data, you can move it around. It's not just locked up in a system. I'm seeing more student information systems have APIs. I'm seeing more course schedule, all the aspects. I mean, what these guys are doing here on campus, pretty interesting. Innovation allows new things to happen, new business models, things you never would have thought about. We would never dreamed of Twitter. The Twitter founders would never have dreamed of Twitter as it exists today. The community built that and dreamt that up. And then slowly Twitter either acquired, borrowed, stole on a few occasions from their community. Entirely new business models, new ways of making money that you never thought of. Cloud computing, paying for a computer or a server by the hour, paying for file storage by the megabyte, pay for what you use. These are all kind of new business models that have emerged out of APIs. And it's allowed us to think about accessing our resources in different ways, but how we allow others to access those resources and share those. So it allows for entirely new economies and markets to emerge. And we see the whole big data thing. Everyone keeps saying big data, big data. That's all about creating markets. That's all about creating and extracting value from data. So it's a business play. It's not just big data and knowledge and intelligence. That's part of it. But there's a lot of people consider data the new oil. And when it comes to business models, it's a pretty interesting dynamics. Like I said, control over your resources. That's why I'm here today. That's why I go to Berkeley. That's why I go to Emory. Why I go to University of Mary Washington. That's why I'm working with University of Oklahoma, is I want to teach the next generation of students to be digitally literate and control their resources, control their access to what they own and what they generate. So, that's why I'm here, is because it's really important to me to take my knowledge from Silicon Valley, what I've been studying, my knowledge from the federal government and from these city governments that I work with, and come here and help you understand this world that's emerging out there and take some control over it. Because the web apps you're using are increasingly using APIs. All of the mobile apps are using APIs. Your devices are using APIs. And there's a lot of privacy issues right now. I've been at most of the NSA big data discussions in Washington, D.C. I'm the only guy with a beard in a suit sitting in the front row at these things, listening to them talk about the opportunity here. And it's really fascinating to go from, the White House Conference Center, which is right there, and listen to their visions of open data and open government and healthcare and energy data, and then to go across the river and then to go to an NSA, and they're saying the same things. There's huge opportunity here, lots of things going on. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to us in the last 10, 20, 30 years when it comes to defending our country. And then go back to Silicon Valley and hear the same buzzwords, but all three have entirely different motivations. And there's a lot of friction in that, just to put it lightly. And I think that's all of this is better off in your hands if you have control over these assets and resources. That's why I'm here, to help you understand that. But also, I mean, for me, it helps me do my projects, do my work much better. Helps me get at, you know, when I'm wanting to write that one story about a couple companies, I go to Open Corporates. I go to Crunchbase. I get the data I need via the API. Crunch it in the spreadsheet, create a little chart visualization. I understand it. I write the story. That's how I tell stories in this space. That's how I do my work and work on projects. And so what this has done for my overall career is pretty phenomenal. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, because I'm an API evangelist, but I've seen what it's done for data journalists, from people who are in the transportation industry, healthcare industry. I'm seeing industry-specific evangelists emerge, people who are just trying to connect the dots with API-driven data, content, and digital resources in their industry, try to understand it. They're lobbying and pushing companies and government agencies to have API so they can just get access to it. I know a lot of people who are pushing, you know, a lot of the police reform that we're hearing about recently by starting with budgetary data. I worked with Policemen's Association, FBI, a couple others to create APIs around officer safety and the suicide rates. They don't track suicides for police officers, which is mind-blowing. So we had to pull together the numbers and data and make an API so we can just start understanding this world. And so I'm seeing that industry by industry by industry, and it's all being driven by APIs, this new level of understanding. So the university is extremely important. I can't articulate that enough, not just campus operations, but understanding this wider world, both as faculty and administrators, but also the students. It's important that the students understand this. So APIs are all around you. Make sure you're aware. Make sure you're leveraging them. It's super important. This is how the next generation of the web is going to be. You know, you're either going to be a consumer or you're going to be building the web and giving, contributing, and programming the web. So leverage APIs. That's it.